We are now joined by His Excellency Gita Wirjawan. He is Minister of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia and speaker at this year's Gallen Symposium. Excellencies, thank you very much for granting us some of your precious time.
Thanks, Gary. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Indonesia has recently been recovered its investment grade status for its foreign debt after 14 years, thus reducing the perceived risk for foreign investors. What risks and challenges still do remain for Indonesia's economy?
Well, I think there are quite many, but they're not things that we can't manage going forward. If we take a look at what we have to do going forward, I think the first and foremost is really education. Getting the soft infrastructure ready so that we can really be a good part of the 21st century. We don't have as many educated people as some of the other Asian, large Asian economies such as China and India. But the good news is that we have a lot of fiscal space now. Our debt to GDP ratio has come down quite dramatically in the last 14 years. It was 24% last year, and it's likely to decline even further to less than 20% in the next 3 years. That I think will allow us to spend on things that really matter for the future of Indonesia and Indonesians. The other stuff is really the hard infrastructure. It's about roads, railroads, power generation, ports and stuff. We're doing that. We're spending the money. We would like to ramp up our spend on infrastructure as a percentage of the GDP to a much higher number than just 3%. China has been spending 8 to 9% of their GDP on infrastructure. I think we need to ramp up the spend on infrastructure. I don't think we'll ever be able to go up to 9% of the GDP in terms of infrastructure spending, but certainly any number above 3% of the GDP would be a good number. And that, I think, will unleash significant value for Indonesia in terms of our being able to overcome some of the other challenges.
Currently, all eyes are pointed towards Europe and the sovereign debt crisis. How is this crisis actually viewed in Indonesia and Southeast Asia? Do you care at all? And can Europe learn something from Indonesia's experience after the Asian crisis of 1997?
We certainly care. I think anybody in the world would desire for a stronger Europe. A stronger Europe economically is only going to be good for everybody, not just in Europe but elsewhere. Look, Indonesia had its own share of crisis. As you recall, in 1998, we went through a pretty difficult period where, fiscally, monetarily, politically, it was not very easy. But we did what we had to do, and some of the measures that had to be undertaken were very, very tough, even beyond comprehension for a lot of people in our part of the world. But we did it. We cleaned up our banking system. Governance has gotten a lot better in so many sectors, and we privatized a lot of the assets, and we have, I think, been very, very prudent from a fiscal standpoint. We've been, a lot more efficient and effective in managing our monetary situation from a policy standpoint and politically. I think we've learned about democracy for quite a while, and it is a relatively well-functioning democracy in Indonesia. All these, I think, point to a good direction for Indonesia. On top of all this, we're blessed with a demographic dividend, which I think will entail, productivity and profitability and economic sizing for the next 5, 10, 15 years for Indonesia. I think, Indonesia today is already the 16th largest economy in the world, a member of the G20. Take a few years view, 2020 will be, I think, likely one of the top 10 economies. And then by 2030, who knows? Standard Chartered, they said that we could be one of the top 5 or 6 economies in the world at potentially $9 trillion US, as opposed to, our being a $1 trillion economy already. Are we in the business of exporting lessons and whatever? Not really. I think we certainly have gone through enough difficult days in our lives, but I think the Europeans could take a look at how we did and where we did it right and where we did it wrong, and that's really, I think, a good point for all of us.
The topic of this year's St. Gallen Symposium is called Facing Risk. Looking back at your life as a business leader as well as a political leader, has your perception of risk changed when you moved from business to politics?
Oh, as I've said, risk-taking in business is all about bottom line. Whereas in the government, it's not just about the bottom line. It's really about making sure that all the relevant stakeholders understand what you do. And sometimes, politics is more about perception than facts. And we just need to make sure that the facts do get interpreted the right way. Things do get lost in translation, and we just need to make sure that they don't get lost in translation as much as they have, or they don't get lost at all. And that's something that I've learned. So risk, I think, comes in many forms. But in government, we can just take a holistic view of what the government of Indonesia has done. I think we've learned to mitigate so many risks, whether it relates to fiscal, monetary, or political, or what have you. And I think it's moving. This is a country or economy that grew at 6.5% last year and was able to manage inflation at less than 4% last year. So the key is, how do we maintain the momentum and the trajectory and the directionality, and I think we're on the right track. We just need to make sure that more and more people at St. Gallen understand where Indonesia is and where Indonesia is headed.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time and your statements, and enjoy your stay at the St. Gallen Symposium.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Yeah.